This podcast contains content that may be triggering, so please practice self-care, knowing that you can stop, pause, and regulate at any point. In our description, you'll find a free resource to help you do just that, to ground throughout your listening experience. Dr. Caron Post is a clinical psychologist and consultant with a private psychotherapy practice in Los Angeles with over 25 years of experience. She was the founding executive director of Maternal Mental Health Now and past recipient of the Los Angeles Psychological Association's Distinguished Service to the Community, Diversity, and Social Justice Award. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology from New York University in 1998. Caron uses an integrated approach influenced by attachment theory, contemporary relational psychoanalysis, emotional regulation, mind-body integration, mindfulness, including modalities such as EMDR and emerging treatments. Her areas of focus include couples and individuals, psychotherapy, depression, anxiety, trauma, loss and grief, life transitions, parenting, relationship issues, and perinatal mood disorders. Caron, welcome, and thank you for joining us on Be the Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me, Ebony.
Oh, I'm so excited to get to chat with you. It's always a pleasure, and I'm really excited for folks to get to basically be flies on the walls and listen to our conversation and see what they take from it.
Great.
Shall we start?
Yes, let's.
Great. So first, just me reading your bio, just me sharing that with folks, I'm sure there is a great awareness of the wealth of experience and expertise that you bring from a range of different fields, right? Whether that's as a therapist, as a consultant, as someone who has been a founding ED for an organization that does so much advocacy and support around mental health and specifically maternal mental health. So, I'm always intrigued for folks to share what's their story, what brought them to the work that they've done.
Yeah, great question. So I think what's brought me to the work, I'll go back just a little extra, and that is wanting to be a psychologist and a psychotherapist to begin with, which didn't begin with perinatal or trauma, may have begun with trauma actually, but certainly not perinatal. And just from the time I was quite young, writing in my diary, I want to be a clinical psychologist at 12. Obviously, a lot for me was healing the family and just my orientation always to try to understand. So, my journey into perinatal mental health and trauma, I guess, began in different ways. I became a mother. That was probably the beginning of it. And It was obviously, as it is for all of us mothers, a very potent and provocative and uh, intense time.
Mhm.
And I started by volunteering for something called the Cedars-Sinai Early Childhood Warm Line, where we gave advice, it was a warm line, not a hotline, because it took a couple of days to get us to call back, but for all kinds of things, temper tantrums, toilet training, emotional things, sleep things. And then from there, really worked in the field of early childhood development. And from that, the early weeks and the transition to motherhood. My dissertation for my doctorate was on the transition to motherhood
Mm.
because I found my transition to motherhood was not easy. I was pretty anxious, and was going through a lot. So, in retrospect, I probably had postpartum depression. I did have postpartum depression or anxiety, but didn't even realize it, even as a psychologist.
Mm.
Certainly didn't get any information about postpartum depression in graduate school,
Yeah.
so, or anxiety. So, that became an area of expertise and interest. And then I got a call from a colleague that a woman named Kimberly Wong was starting a volunteer group just to kind of like a task force. We hadn't even named it a task force yet. It was just a
Mm.
group. Let's get together, people in LA, professionals, survivors, people with experience in perinatal mental health and postpartum depression. And I started showing up at that. And it became like a brain trust of so many people in Los Angeles who had expertise in this area. Kimberly Wong herself was a survivor of severe postpartum depression that she was hospitalized for. And it's very relevant, really, to the work we're going to be talking about today and the work of Cactus in Bloom because there were many things that contributed to her severe postpartum depression where she tried to take her life. Um, but one of them, and that was very unrecognized and kind of apropos to the discussion of childhood sexual violence and trauma, for her, it was a traumatic loss. She had lost her mother as a girl. And nobody knew that. Providers didn't know that.
Mm.
And nobody knew that that could be a trigger, you know, once she would give birth, that her mom might not be present and what that could bring up. So anyway, we then it's interesting also the idea of community because that was a large group. Many were women and all coming together to try to work on this issue, to raise awareness in Los Angeles, to do training, to do public awareness, to figure out how we could help, to have more services. Um, and I was just one of the volunteers, and then we got a grant, and I kind of just there was like a leadership vacuum because we were just a group of people together, and I just kind of stepped into that. And then we became, a nonprofit, and the rest is history. Then we morphed into, had a name change, Maternal Mental Health now. And I stepped down some years ago, maybe about 4 years ago, but the organization is flourishing and doing really great things, just like you.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ah, it's heartwarming to hear the journey because it starts in community. It has to start with the folks who are um, oftentimes experiencing the challenges, right? Like when you become a parent, when you become a mom, reality is different, life is different, and you see things or experience things in a new way. And I hear you when you said like folks came together in order to find resources, in order to resource other people and do trainings and educate folks. And then it has built out of that. Um, I wonder how within all of those pieces of your journey, the work related to survivors of CSA or survivors of, sexual violence in adulthood, at that intersection of the perinatal time and parenting, what has that looked like for you, with the folks that you've worked with and what their needs have been?
Mhm. Well, along the journey and learning about perinatal mental health issues, all of them in pregnancy and the postpartum period, um, learning about over time what are the particular vulnerabilities that each woman brings to this journey. And clearly, it became obvious that trauma of any sort, and including childhood sexual trauma, is very important. And you probably know the statistics better than I do. I know that it's quite prevalent. Um, And with different studies quoting somewhere between 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, women have suffered from childhood sexual abuse. So just becoming aware of that and the prevalence, and then trying and learning how to, uh, awareness is kind of a growing thing, and how to look for it and then how to work with it. So just having my eyes opened to the prevalence, and I guess coming to realize that we have to um, treat each woman we work with in the whole perinatal journey, um, in a sense, as if anything could be triggering in OBGYN care and pregnancy and birth and parenting. Um, and and then, sometimes women know that they have been sexually abused as children, but sometimes they don't. So that tender, gentle, bit by bit, going along, and meeting each woman where they are.
Yeah.
Learning to be aware and to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I connect with everything you're saying because I think awareness is very much uh it's less talked about, right? In terms of how do we even create the awareness around such a sensitive topic? How do we ask about these things? How do we assess for what's going on for someone? Even in thinking about the loss of a parent at an early age and what that means in the pregnancy process, but specifically in the moment of giving birth and the loss that you feel so heavily in that space, whatever that space is. And so, you know, what have you found in terms of the tools in your toolbox, right? Because every therapist ideally would have a very diverse toolbox to meet those individual needs that you're speaking to for that specific person and what's showing up for them. What tools have you found have been really helpful um, to support survivors during this
Mhm.
time?
Such a great question. Yeah, I think you're so right about awareness. And when we think of that word very deeply, awareness and how deep it can go. And awareness has to do with listening and noticing and learning. And so I think that the general skills of an attuned therapist, empathy and connection and understanding, so both having theoretical understanding of what is at stake and at play for survivors, but also for all human beings, how the nervous system works.
Mm,
And um, what is the latest in our understanding, and both theoretically, and what kind of applications does that have? And that goes back to awareness too. So learning, and then learning the manifestations of nervous system, either hyperarousal or hypoarousal.
mm,
Uh, um, the theory can really inform practice, whether it be polyvagal theory
mm,
or all sorts of other, whether, Bruce Perry's, approach, and looking at how the nervous system is the architecture of it, the functionality of it,
mm,
and what states a person may be in, and how to help them shift from one state to another. And that incorporates all kinds of things in the toolbox. So mind, body, somatics, mindfulness, uh,
mm,
and then ways to connect and help a person learn to regulate their own nervous system, but also, so that once the nervous system is regulated, then they can feel more relaxed. Maybe they're very tense. They,
mm,
most likely are very tense if they're survivors. There's a degree of holding and protection and vigilance, and not to break through that or break that down, but to understand and build an awareness of that, and help empower a person to be able to have more kind of response flexibility, so to speak, that maybe they need to be guarded and protected about a lot of things, even still in the present, but maybe sometimes that is over determined, and maybe that's taking a big toll on them. And maybe there's different ways to, I guess this gets into a fundamental aspect of my toolbox, is helping a person sort out, tease apart past from present. So what they're holding in their body and what's old and what belongs to today's time.
Mm.
Yeah, does that make any sense? Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I'm hearing so much goodness in what you're talking about, so much exciting practice. Because on the other side is a level of liberation and freedom for that individual. I remember, a mentor of mine who's been in the field of mental health for over 25 years, really telling me um, the first step is helping someone have control over their body and
Mm-hmm.
how that leads to so many other pieces. And I'm hearing you say the same thing. I'm hearing, very strong echoes of the same pieces. How do we support folks to get into their bodies, to have ownership over, when we think about sexual violence, the body is the site of the pain. It was the site of the violence. And so often folks want to run away from the site of the violence, but that's the self. And so, how do we help folks get back in,
Yes,
which can be really triggering, very overwhelming, can bring up a lot of things. But how do we help them have power over this everything, like their body,
absolutely.
and then move to that next stage?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then where is the flexibility also, I'm hearing, of the clinician to not pull out the tools that have helped that person survive, but to offer them additional tools?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's so well said. And yes, the not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because all of those tools, whether what all of those self-protective tools got that person survived and are to be honored and respected
Mm,
and even thanked. Um, and as you're saying, what else can be added
mm,
to their tools? We're not trying to have them get rid of those tools at all, and
yeah.
they still may be necessary. We can come to look over time whether, they are um, running the show and saying, use me, and demanding in a sense that
Mm,
things are very unsafe right now, and I must keep doing my job as a protector.
mm,
Oh, I must not let my guard down. And it's not for us as therapists to say you should let your guard down, but to empower at all, because it's rather to help the person again to tease out sometimes, well, do I need that right now? And maybe not. But what else have I learned? What else can I use? And I think a lot of this comes from what was the most important thing in the therapy is the development of the relationship between the therapist and the person, and trust, how trust builds, and trust takes time.
mhm,
Um, and so it's that attunement too,
mm.
because a lot of times what's very hard in being a trauma survivor is the aloneness.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
aloneness. So first to join with the person for however long that takes, and I've worked with, say, women who had birth trauma, and they knew they had birth trauma, and they knew that there were some sexual trauma when they were younger, and they just weren't ready at all.
Mhm,
There were many other things in life and parenting, and even with the idea of, well, some of these things that are hard, maybe in parenting or even in my marriage, or even the way I experience anxiety a lot of the time, they may be related to I think they are related to my birth trauma and to my early childhood
Mm,
sexual violence trauma, but I'm not ready for that.
mm,
And that's perfectly fine and okay, so it's a process.
yeah.
And, and there are different modalities then that I use or may use, and attachment focused EMDR is one of them. And that is EMDR, but with a focus on attachment and resourcing, and
Mm,
the person get very, very resourced before we begin that EMDR work.
mm,
And and other things too, just in the relationship exploring and as you said, people learning about their bodies and becoming aware of it together. And once they are aware of what's going on in their bodies, how to bring healing energies and breath and other sorts of important things
mm,
to their bodies.
yeah. There's the time piece that I think is incredibly important. Like, there's so much that's important, right? Like, the time piece, every time that comes up with a client or just in sharing that with folks, I think it continues to surprise people who've heard it only like for the first time, that our brains don't really know the difference, because we've created time as humans in the way that it operates, but our brains, when there is a trauma, can be stuck or can see the present as that past. And so, I'm hearing this really, really powerful piece about helping folks not just be able to have control over their bodies, but also over time and their brain's perception of time, bringing them to the here and now, into, in some ways, what folks would call like the adult self,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you experience childhood trauma, right? So I'm hearing some of that, and then, attunement, awareness, somatic, the body, all of these pieces. And I'm wondering if attachment EMDR, for, say, folks who are unaware what it is in the first place, if you could speak a little more about the work that that particular tool or practice does in
Mm-hmm.
relation to any of those pieces.
Oh, good question. And again, it's not for everyone or appropriate at any time, all the time. But EMDR is, attachment focused EMDR is EMDR, and EMDR is stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it's a modality that's been very well researched for PTSD, and which is all forms of post-traumatic stress. So like you were saying, if we have had trauma when we're younger, it manifests in today's time as if it's happening now. And I just wanted to, expanding on what you were
Yeah.
saying, it's not as if one thinks one is in the past, but it's an implicit memory. And by implicit, that means it's just felt in the body and you don't even know why. Why is my heart beating so fast? Why am I sweating? Why am I feeling so irritable and on edge and startly? It's
Mm,
just in the body and you don't even know that that's the flashback, so to speak, but you don't, it's not like in the movies where you have a flashback to the actual
yeah.
event itself, although that can happen as well, but it could be completely disconnected from that. It's just an implicit body memory.
Mm,
So EMDR, it's a whole protocol using something called bilateral stimulation. It started off originally being eye movements, left, right, but it doesn't have to be. It can be tapping left, right on your body, or using tappers. You hold them in your hands and a little vibration goes left, right, left, right. And that engages the whole brain and something they call adaptive information processing. And it's just it's just very interesting. It's another kind of portal. And it's actually a body based, it's a somatic therapy in the end, even though there's a lot of top down
mm,
uh, activity as well. And you reprocess and with sexual trauma. you may very well reprocess an actual sexually traumatic event or events. Uh, and and as you reprocess it, it gets to, simply put, live differently in your nervous system, because what you're also reprocessing is the messaging you took in to yourself from what happened,
Yeah.
because that is often the most deleterious and damaging of all, you know,
Yeah.
the beliefs about yourself
Mm.
and the beliefs about your world that you took in. So, you know, yes, and through the resourcing and the process and the relationship, it's also relational. It's not like, let's go in and do EMDR. It's based on the relationship as well. So it can be a very healing process, that again can help. It's not like that will never have happened. That will always be something that happened to the person, um, and that changed them. But it's not living. It's, what's the word? It becomes kind of neutralized. It becomes not really charged anymore.
Mm.
So when it works like that, that's how it
Mhm.
works. It's not charged anymore.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And the different ways of thinking about it. Because so often folks say, so I just want it to go away. How
Yeah,
do I make it that it just goes away?
yeah.
And especially sometimes thinking that therapy will do that. And what it means to say to someone, you know, therapy doesn't make it go away. Unfortunately, nothing will make it go away because it happened, but the impact can be dulled over time. But I really, really, even more so, I love this language of it becomes less charged. The
Yeah.
impact, how it shows up, the way it has made you think about
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That can change.
Yes.
The way it makes you, has made you think about yourself, can really change. And
Mm.
also how it lives in your body can heal and become less charged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea that you can heal is
Yeah,
so
healing.
powerful.
It
Oh.
is. That's what it's all about, right? Healing. It is so powerful. And therapy and all of us, just we're trying to create conditions where a person's innate ability, we're not healing people, we're
Hmm.
creating conditions where a person's innate ability to heal can be nurtured and nourished,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Do you feel that way too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I don't have the power to heal anybody.
I know.
Like who am I to be like, you're healed? Like that's not that's
Right.
not a thing.
It's
And
not.
and it- it's so much about when violence has happened to you, someone has put power over your body, over your ability many times to move, to speak to anybody about it. There's so much power over
Mhm.
that if I sit around thinking that I have the power to heal you, that's my power over you yet
Abs-
again.
Absolutely, that's such a great point.
Yeah, so I really think about it as I'm walking with folks and they're giving me permission to walk with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
and that's time by time they're giving you permission each time, and how you're with them and the attunement and your compassion and your empathy, they're learning each time, oh,
Mm.
I can trust her.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes there's a rupture, and maybe we say or do something that's not as wonderful as we would
Hmm.
hope, or can be triggering in and of itself.
Yeah.
Then an important piece, and I think an important piece in my toolbox is always being aware of the relationship, um and has there been a rupture, and have I misattuned? And it would be crazy to think that I would always perfectly attune.
Even though it would be lovely. It's, I would love to always, yes, be attuned to folks. And I also recognize I'm human. I make mistakes. I misstep.
Yeah,
And
Yes.
what it means to be humble and to apologize and know that I'm not going to get it always right because I'm not the expert of anybody but myself.
Absolutely. And you're just a human, you know. I think, yeah, I agree with you. And I think too, you know, from attachment theory, we know too, yes, like you said, it would be wonderful to perfectly attune, but no one can, no wonderful mother even can
Mm,
perfectly attune with her baby. You just can't. It's actually impossible. Maybe baby's crying and she's on the phone or making dinner or, you know, or is going through something herself.
mhm,
So those ruptures, and then a baby would get upset, you know,
mm,
where are you? And then a mom comes back and says, oh, here I am, you know, and it's a kind of, it's a repair, there's a repair.
mm,
Actually, the repair that is the thing that strengthens attachment. We think perfect attunement would be perfect, but
mm,
actually it would be almost a little psychotic making because that means the world somehow, like an expectation that the
yeah,
world could always be perfectly, and it, you know, versus a resilience of sometimes, oh, that didn't feel good, you know, great, but it can be repaired. So I
mm,
think so important and an important piece of building a trusting relationship with a survivor or anybody else.
yeah. Thank you for speaking to the parent piece. I feel like something internally just needed that, as a parent, as a survivor parent, the level of anxiety that exists on wanting to always and very much fueled by and I see this in many other folks who've experienced CSA who are parents and not wanting at all for their child to experience any form of harm, right? Wanting to the hypervigilance coming in a way of anything, and therefore creating this perfection, the need for
Yes.
perfection, and what it means for a baby. I mean, I know with my eldest, when she would cry, I would have panic attacks because I was just like, I can't, she can't cry. I want her to be, and I'm a therapist, and I'm like, I should know this. I go to therapy, I process this. But when it's your own child, you're just like, all right, what do I need to do here to make sure that I always answer the call? And so I appreciate the reframing of the repair is actually in the return and
Yeah.
the learning that happens in that process, which I think more folks need to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree with you. Absolutely. And what you're saying is so profound, really, and so resonates so much
Mm,
too. I remember when I first became a mother the first time, and I think yeah, you described it so well, that need, that internal demand to be perfect, that one's baby is never ever upset.
mm,
And that comes from a trauma place and a
mhm,
projection in a sense into the baby of
yeah.
something that was unbearable, probably for us, you know.
Mhm,
And um that again is part of that in therapy or in one's own mind, teasing out, you
mm,
know, is this really traumatic that my baby's crying? You know, it feels
mm,
it, but no, you know, I had unanswered cries for help or think, you know, and but that's not wasn't of on the same order, you know.
yeah, that's not what's happening now in this time.
Yes. And sometimes that intellectual understanding is helpful, but just like not helpful enough. Because
Mm,
as you were saying too about our bodies, because your body's activated anyway.
mhm,
Your body just it's hearing the crying, hearing your child's distress, and it's just boom there. You're just there.
yeah.
And that's where just I think the work over and over again in some of the body-based uh, techniques, and also again the relationship, because one of the things we know about what helps a person, going back to aloneness, which is one of the
Mhm,
hard things about trauma, what helps a person to regulate their own nervous systems is co-regulation. And
yeah.
that means being regulated by another mind and person who is digesting and metabolizing and there with you, what you're experiencing. That's that attunement,
Yeah.
in a good enough way. Just like Winnicott's good enough mother, we're not supposed to be the perfect, but in a good enough way, the good enough therapist. And so that co-regulation piece where we're mirroring, we're our baby goes, ha, and we go, ha, and they feel us with them. And so that's the co-regulation piece and someone else. So there are things to do to self-regulate as we get older now, but then we need co-regulation from partners, friends, and even our babies help us. There's a co-regulation and our therapists, And I'm thinking of, talking to you today, right from the beginning when we had our beginning of our conversation, I was thinking what a good co-regulator you are
Oh,
because yeah, because you're very attuned because people's faces are very, important,
yeah.
and and warmth.
Mm.
Warmth is very important. So you're asking about a toolbox, and genuine warmth, not like put on warmth,
Yeah.
Um, so you can't just say, I'm going to be a warm therapist. You either feel warm,
Mm.
you're either generating that, you feel it, and then the other person feels it. So these are the things that I think help a survivor of sexual trauma or any trauma
Mm.
begin to feel co-regulated. The other person's there, and that becomes healing.
Yeah.
You agree with
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is also in part why therapists generally go to therapy. Because I mean, we all need it. And we all need to know what it's like on the other side. And we all have our own stuff to work through because we all need that co-regulation, that presence. We all need it.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely. Right on. I mean, I feel, um, yes, we get so much from therapy. And sometimes people ask me, well, why aren't you burnt out? You do all this work for so long. And I I think one of the answers to that is my ongoing therapy.
Mm.
And so and even if I'm in therapy or not in therapy, that always walking the walk. I don't, I'm like what you're saying exactly. I don't feel like, oh, my work is done, and now I'm here, I'm all done. And I'm going to now help you with your problems. I feel like I'm in the soup.
Hmm.
I'm in it, but I am maybe walking the walk is what I think can prevent burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to do that, right? And things that are worth it are hard sometimes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. It is hard. That's right. It is hard.
Yeah.
But it's also then it can, I just thought of this right now. One way it prevents burnout is because even though the work is hard, of therapy is very hard work, especially when there's trauma, that if it's also exciting,
Mm. Mm.
right? And it also fuels us as therapists to be able to grow. And if we're growing, then we know what it's like to be on the edge of our growth, which I think is hopefully lifelong. And then we can we genuinely then are interested and excited and attuned to our patients being on the edge of their growth, the edge
Yeah.
of below.
Yeah. I often say to my clients that I'm not going to ask you to do something I'm not willing to do myself.
It's beautiful. I like
And,
it.
because whether or not they know my own journey, I know my journey. And I know that there's a reason I walked into this chapter of being a therapist and wanting to hold space for other people. But that requires this other piece of I have to be ongoing in the belief that it is not a product-based conclusion, that it's process-based,
Yeah.
and that means that I am going to be in the process of continuing to grow as
Yeah.
I walk with others.
So beautifully said. I couldn't agree more.
Plus, if I thought that there was an end, there'd be so much pressure. It'd just be like, okay, perfection all the time.
Right. Like
That's
there,
not possible.
it doesn't exist. No.
No, it doesn't exist. And so, I've appreciated all the ways that you're talking about the tools and your approaches to care, your approaches to life and to showing up for other folks and for yourself. And I wonder if there's one skill, one tool that you feel is essential and doable for a practitioner
Mhm.
who may feel like, uh, I'm I'm not really sure where to begin in
Mm,
supporting maybe their own client who has just disclosed that they've
mm,
experienced CSA or sexual violence in
mm,
adulthood.
I'm not sure to where to begin, and you're saying this person, this therapist, doesn't have any experience thus far, perhaps? Is that what you're saying, or not?
Maybe they are, they don't, maybe, and I say this knowing that in my experience, I've had therapists who have been working with folks for a while, and then there's a disclosure because that person feels then really safe and connected, and there is that strong relationship that's been built so that they can disclose. But this might be the first time that that therapist is hearing something like this, and they're not sure what to do.
Mhm,
And so is there somewhere they can go, a skill that you feel that would be helpful for them to
mhm.
build the capacity to support that client?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it all, not to be overly simplistic, but it does really come back to empathy. It's, of course, a disclosure of great, you know, significance if
Mm,
a patient would open up and say that, even after many years and feel safe enough. So if one is attuned and one is being deeply empathetic to this, and again, it's this specific person,
mhm,
there isn't a general rule about what that might look like.
mhm,
Because remember now, this therapist is attuning to this specific client. But, you know, whatever it may be, whatever comes to the therapist in that moment, but that's real based on what they're experiencing. So that might be um, appreciating, expressing appreciation for how hard that must have been. This must be to open up, or noticing what they notice in their body.
mm,
So the person might be, you know, um, you might be able to tell they're feeling a whole lot of things, and in their body, and you can inquire about that.
mm,
And what are they feeling now? And um, again, in the appreciation, saying, that you're glad that they told you that. And um, maybe also inquiring how it feels, because that's very important, how it feels now that they've just divulged that. They may have the consequential feelings of shame, embarrassment, relief. You don't know. So I think really being opened and exquisitely attuned to that moment
mhm,
is all, there's no, like we were saying before, there's no magic bullet. There's not a thing to do.
mm,
I don't
mhm.
think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. Do you think that there is?
Well, I'm hearing you speak to curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
what it is to, I mean, honestly, and I hear you when you're like, maybe this is, simple. But if we go back to the foundations of what this craft, right, or art of therapy really is, we can boil it down to some really simple things across the board. And I think one of those that I'm hearing you kind of pull out is how often do we practice this tool of curiosity, of the acknowledgement of, you know, asking questions that are specific to the body, to what's showing up in the body as a result of this. Those are foundational. And yet sometimes we can be called away from them and almost like to call ourselves back to this.
Yes, that's such a great way of putting it. And one of the things that may call us away from it is just what you're saying, kind of a feeling, oh, there's something I'm supposed to be doing here.
Mm,
There's some knowledge I don't have, and there may be a lot of knowledge we don't have that we need to learn. There always is, and learn more. But in that moment, we have what we need,
mm,
which
mm.
is when you say you called it out as curiosity, and also, I'd call it really deep, deep listening and awareness. And that's if there is magic, that is the magic.
It is. And I'm pulling out all these nuggets of goodness. And I'm big on language. And so I heard you say, we have what we need. In that moment, we have what we need.
Yes,
And
yes.
how often do we remind ourselves of that, or how often do I remind myself of that, that in this moment, I'm going to move my mind from a place of scarcity instead of going to the place of, I don't have enough, I need to get more.
Mhm.
Bring my mind to, I have everything that I need in order to show up. I just need to trust that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, from the scarcity, that I have what I need. And also I would add to that that
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that, like you were saying before, that I have the magic wand that I can just make it better.
Mm,
I have what I need doesn't mean I can make it better right now for the person.
yeah,
You, you know,
yeah.
but
But this can, go ahead.
yeah, I have what I need to hold space, to be deeply curious, to be to be with them.
Mm.
I, you know,
Can we take a moment and talk about the with them piece? Because I wonder if what happens is that because we're human and because there is often this idea that we are going to heal people, and I've had many clients say to me, this idea of they need to be fixed or they're broken,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
that there's this jumping out of being with someone, um, for many different reasons. In part, I wonder what for clinicians comes up for them in terms of their own relationship with what's being disclosed, what shows up internally, whether or not that might be part of their own story, or whether that might be close to someone in their lives, because whether or not we um, talk about it or always recognize it, everyone knows someone who is a survivor of, right? And so um, I wonder if that plays a role, like this internal curiosity about what's coming up for me in this moment that I'm not able to be with this
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, I think that is such a key piece that should be in our toolbox as therapists, just what you're saying. If you notice, that self-awareness that
Mm,
comes from walking your own walk. If you notice, I'm not with the person right now, as you said, or I'm jumping away from it, or I'm wanting to fix them, or I'm wanting to take this away, I'm wanting to smooth over it, I'm wanting to tell them, oh no, it wasn't your fault. I'm just wanting to fix it,
mhm, mhm,
um, before prematurely, or have them come to something prematurely to spare
mm,
them pain. That could be, and to fix the pain, it could be about so many things. So that inquiry, like you said, the curiosity, um, hopefully we're adept at that. And if we're not adept in a moment or in a given situation, we get some consultation, if it's not something we can answer for ourselves. But different things may come up, as you said. Oh, I'm noticing this sexual abuse, this content is making me really anxious, and
mm.
um I don't know what it's about. And maybe there will be a discovery there as well, just like our patients are discovering they didn't even know they had sexual abuse. It could be the same, it
Yeah.
could be the same thing. and it may take us a while to get there. Or it could be more general, like it's hard for us, as you were saying, and wanting to fix things for people and becoming therapists in the first place.
Mm,
Um, and wanting to take away pain and suffering. So that can get the better of us
mm,
sometimes because we can't anyway. We want to, but we can't. But we can accompany them. We can be with. We can create conditions that
mm,
are healing. So if we notice we're going into like or going away from the content or going into wanting to fix, we have to just be curious. Well, what is that about myself? I don't seem to be able to tolerate this particular
mm.
pain that I'm hearing. Um, and maybe this person reminds me of myself, and you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing all of that. Um, because I heard so many different tools in there, uh, along with them really, again, being foundational and an invitation to go back to them, to connect with those again in these moments where um, maybe we're not sure what's coming up for us, but to just like return to the foundation of the craft.
yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely. Return to that foundation of empathy and curiosity and deeper listening to the person, to what's coming up for you.
Hmm.
Always know that what's coming up for you is a resource for the therapy,
Mm,
that is an important resource.
yeah. Yeah.
I
Thank
feel
you.
afraid. Why do I feel afraid? What's, you know.
Yeah. Whew. Um, Speaking of resources, I'm wondering if there is a book or an article or something that
Hmm.
you would recommend, and maybe this could be something for practitioners, something for survivors, some for parents, um, because
Mhm,
I've already heard like the good enough parent, like the good enough mother,
mhm,
that I use quite often, and it's so powerful. I made sure to read it myself when I had a child and reread it because it hits different at each
mhm,
phase of life and raising a child.
mhm,
But what would you recommend for folks?
mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, I think just learning about and becoming sensitive and attuned to the very concrete, specific issues that survivors um, face. I think we all need to become educated on that as therapists and obviously across the whole interdisciplinary spectrum of
Mhm.
doulas, midwives, doctors, pediatricians, everybody. But I really like, do you know Kiki Hansard's book?
Oh no.
Um, it's supporting survivors of sexual abuse through pregnancy and childbirth. That's really good. Um, and then in terms of therapists working with trauma, I'm just trying to think what would be very helpful and foundational there. Hmm, hmm. Well, there's a therapist psychoanalyst I like very much. His name's Howard Bacall,
Mm.
and he has a theory of optimal responsiveness
Mm.
and has written some books and papers about it, um, and generally speaking. So I like that very much, and just to encourage us and know that to be optimally responsive as much as within our limitations and of the other person,
Mm.
to the specific person we're with is what's healing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like that. And I was trying to think if there's anything on rupture and repair I could recommend. Because I think when you picked up on that perfectionism, especially that survivors can have, oh no, my baby must not, and the pressure and
Hmm.
Um, I think that's very key, and maybe how to help therapists to know more, maybe based on research and theory, how to help them know that they're not supposed to be perfectly attuned either. They work to be very attuned, but that it's inevitable that they will fail, and then being curious about that and attuned to that and working on the repair. I'm just trying to think if there's anything, any reading I could think of that would be helpful to that. Do you know Ed Tronick at all? He's another analytic. Have you ever seen the still face experiment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's based on that,
Yeah.
um, and because it talks about, the good, the bad, and he talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's good and there's bad, and so,
Mm.
but bad happens. Bad is the misattunement,
Yeah. Oh, it's
And
so
then,
hard to watch that.
oh my
You
God,
just see the bait. Oh, yeah.
it's terrible, of course.
But it's good to see. It's good to know. And to be able to for therapists to check in with it, to dig deeper, to know that they too don't have to be perfect. I feel like the good enough um mother piece is for everyone to apply to this pressure of perfection.
Absolutely. And maybe I'm hearing and thinking as you're saying that if we can do that more as therapists, then then that gets enacted in the therapy relationship as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
And because it is healing to have a rupture and repair.
Mhm.
It's, it's healing,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
never have a rupture. You can think, well, yeah, it's all great, but what happens if we get in a little fight, or what happens if she annoys me, or
Yeah, which you see that like with folks because I used to work supporting folks who have experienced DV and IP and intimate partner violence. And one of the big fears that come out of that is what if there is if there is an argument, if there is a disagreement, if there is some rupture after having experienced whether you were a child when you were growing up and you were a child in a home with DV or IPV, or if you're a survivor who's come out of that as an adult and are in a new relationship, the fear still lives with you that you cannot argue that that's not
that's right.
healthy.
Right, absolutely. That you can't be at odds about anything with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how to even help repair a little bit of that because we know that there with ACEs, we know that there's oftentimes more than one harm, one trauma that happens in childhood. And sometimes the correlation can also be that there's, sexual abuse in the home for that child, and there's also DV in the home as well. So what does that mean for these two to live together at the
Mhm.
intersections?
Mhm.
So much, so much.
So much there. Yes, yes. So that could be part of what's healing in the therapeutic relationship, you know, as trust builds, to
Mhm.
ask your patient, did I get that right? Or, or maybe that was off, or, certainly be encouraging if your patient says to you, no, you didn't get that, just to be very open and curious and
Yeah.
welcoming of all that.
Yeah. Thank
But
you for telling me
yeah,
that I
there you go.
misstepped.
Yes,
Thank you.
eh, it's wonderful. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that just flows over into that parent-child relationship. Because when you may not have had a model of that,
Hmm.
when you
Hmm.
may not have had someone to say to you, I'm sorry that I did the wrong thing. I hurt you. I'm sorry. And here's how I'm going to move forward with what you've said and
Yeah.
do better.
Yeah.
Then as a parent now, you have that and you get to say, okay, oh, I have that experience in my body. I have that experience in my mind. I can apply this
Yeah, that's
over
beautiful.
here.
Yes, yes. And then, right. And that's wonderful for your child. And then you're kind of also like reparenting yourself because you're getting that experience again. You're getting a do-over. You're not the child, but you love your child so much. You are also the child,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh,
you know, vicariously, you know.
I mean, aren't we all?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I mean, I would love to be carted in a stroller
Oh.
sometimes and just like, hang out. Love
True.
it.
Love it. Truth be told.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Um, I
absolutely.
wonder, you know, is there something that you would like for survivors to know? Survivors who are in their who are pregnant or postpartum, survivors who might be even family planning right now or who are
Mhm.
parenting. I know those are very different kind of range. Like there's a
Yes.
range there, but is there something that you think would be important for them to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the most important thing I think for them to know is while what they experienced was very difficult and traumatic, and even has had some very real negative impacts on them, some of which may still very much be alive and uh, they may be suffering from, that um, that that the perinatal journey, really, the family planning, the pregnancy, the birth, the breastfeeding, if you breastfeed, the parenting, actually really is a unique healing opportunity. In particular, I mean, life's a healing opportunity for all of that. Um, uh, with and with the right therapy partner, I believe, a
Mm-hmm.
biased fan of therapy. But there are other ways for people to heal too, but it's the one I happen to know about. And that not only that can they heal and that they've survived, but they can thrive because the yes, that this journey will probably activate a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things for them. Um, but with the right help, it is an opportunity to heal the wounds and heal the wounds and kind of even grow more than they could imagine in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe uh, grow parts of themselves that might not have grown otherwise. So that it may be activating and difficult, the journey, but if they get help, if they get the right help and um, again, I just feel it truly is an opportunity for growth. This time in a woman's life is very can be very growthful, and I've seen it a lot with survivors that
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they go through a lot of stuff comes up, but they find parts of themselves they didn't know they had, strengths, capacities, um, grow in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Compassion for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Um,
and one of the questions I get often from folks seeking therapy is not knowing that they have the right to interview the therapist or
aha.
even knowing what to ask. Are there questions that you think would be helpful for someone seeking therapy to ask that therapist?
Um, yeah, well, I think it is important to ask if they've worked with trauma and if they have any experience with childhood sexual trauma. Um, and sometimes, these are questions you can ask on the phone, but sometimes the best thing is that, to have an initial consultation, which is hard because you may have to have it with several people. But
Mhm.
again, to trust, to see what it's like to be with that person, and and that doesn't mean you feel compelled that you have to go into your trauma right away at all, but just whatever is up for you and alive for you and seeing how it feels to be with that person. I'm trying to think of what else you could ask them. I mean, and to get a feel for them, tell them what's going on with you, and
Mhm.
see how it feels again, how it feels to you to be, how they respond, how you feel in your body when you're talking to them.
Yeah. That's so key.
Yeah.
The tuning to the self in that moment, what's showing up in relationship to this person.
I think so, because people could say lots of things. You can ask a lot of questions, what modalities, what this, how many years experience, where
Mm.
did you go to school, And it's not like they're not important questions, but it's not gonna be the what so much as the how they answer and how, I mean, the quality, the feeling of it that you get.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. The last question I have for you is there anything else that maybe I haven't asked that you um think is important to share?
Hmm. Oh, I think you just brought up a very interesting point, and that people don't feel very empowered around finding a therapist, and it's hard to find one. So, uh, not only what questions to ask, but along the lines of why you're asking that question, so that they can maybe, it's hard. Sometimes people tell survivors of sexual trauma and other trauma, trust yourself, trust your feelings.
Mm,
Also, that's hard to do because of what happened to them. So, on the one hand, I want to say trust your feelings. On the other hand, I know that could be a very insensitive thing to say because that's a process and you just don't know. And you sometimes can't trust your feelings because of your experiences that were so confusing.
yeah.
And so, but just try your best with that, you know.
Yeah. And I would add the piece about practicing this idea of trust, even if it doesn't wind up the way that folks want it to or think it would. You can start with a therapist, and if it doesn't work out, if that wasn't actually the right fit for whatever reason, then you can shift.
Yeah.
Right? And then maybe that next choice is going to be a better fit. It is exhausting work emotionally to find a new therapist and all of that. It can be, but it's also an opportunity to practice building this trust with self as you learn more about what you want, what feels right for you, because that's the feeling out. Like if you haven't had an opportunity to feel out what works for you or to know in relation to another person, this could be good practice to learn that.
That's fantastic. That really is. That you had an experience and you tried someone out and you thought maybe they were good, but some sessions in you realize not really. So you're right. That can be really learning to trust yourself. I think about it sometimes and I wonder what the special sauce is in being able to help people with their healing. And I think it's love. I think it's the love that we actually have for our patients. So there you have it.
Mm. And I don't, think that I've heard the word love in relation to clients and doing the work of therapy in a very long time. And I'm wondering, why is it missing?
Yeah.
Unless it's just me, it might just be me.
Oh, I think you're right. It's so interesting that it's missing. Are we love phobic? Are we caught up? Do we think we're professionals, so we're not supposed to have
Mm.
emotions and love and attachment even? Uh,
Mm.
that's all wrong and bad, and we're just these doers and fixers and mechanics of the mind. Um,
Mm.
but
Is love a crossing of boundaries?
right, right. Do we think love is a crossing of boundaries?
Mm.
But I don't know. I think that's where all the power and potency of healing is. That's
Mm.
what I've come to feel after all this time.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. It's been delightful.
I want to thank you so much for just taking your time to chat and to answer all these questions and um, just share so much of your thoughts and your experience and your heart about this topic because we need to talk more about this, and I'm excited that that we're doing it. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and I learned a lot and really enjoyed talking with you, and I love that you're doing this. It's so important. So
Thank you.
we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Thank you
Okay.
so much. There was a lot shared today, and I want to encourage folks listening to connect with what resonated with you most. Consider one practice you can take from here and move into learning more about or even practicing if it feels appropriate to do so. If you would like to support the work of Cactus in Bloom to bring you these type of conversations and to do culture change work that builds skills, creates awareness, and improves equitable care for survivors of childhood sexual abuse and sexual violence in adulthood, consider a donation. Your contribution can make a world of difference. And together, let's see what blooms.